One thing that everyone has concern about is when a business like us or a business owners, and we're all three business owners that are here today, I don't even introduce everybody, that you're afraid of is that we're going to come in, we're going to do a hard sell, and we're going to come in here and give you stuff that we want you to hear and not what you should hear. We know where you're at as business owners because that's what we do is support you and other businesses like that. So today, we've made it real clear between the three of us that what we wanted to do is to impart knowledge with you, to know that what you need to do as a business person to market yourself, advertise, and what's the appropriate way to start that process. So what we're going to do today is do that for you. First of all, I'd like to introduce Mike Llewellyn. Mike is from FFM, the signs that you see that are emergency relief signs as well as informational signs on 14, 231, soon to be in Montgomery, and other locations in the future. With us today too is Pat. Pat hails from the state of Missouri. Pat is one of the owners of 95.7, The Pool. I do, with KMS, I'm the owner, is that I do internet, Facebook, social media, and all other avenues to brand companies. What we want to do today is now take you through some points. We've given you a note taker where you can put down those notes to take back. So with that said, Mike, if you would please.
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me today. And thanks to Jim and Nick's for the food. I am, as Dan said, in the advertising business, but my goal today isn't to sit here and sell advertising. If you're in the business we're in, our success is measured by your success, by the business's success. So it's not measured short term in terms of how many dollars of advertising you sell. What really counts for us for the long term is how successful are those businesses that you work with. And all three of us, that's what we live. Today, the idea is to talk about how to use a strategy to get better value, better return on investment for how you advertise your business, whether it's us or anyone else that you might use. So if there's one thing that small businesses across the country have a challenge with, not all small business owners are advertising experts, are media experts. And what we're going to try to do today is talk about ways to build a strategy to make advertising work more effectively for your business. We all know advertising works. Who's here have heard of GoDaddy? Anybody? Everybody? That's a business that really used advertising to create what they do. The McDonald's, the Anheuser-Busch's. There's no question that advertising works. As small business owners that don't have anywhere near that budget, near that amount of resource to use, the question is now, how do we really get, without that budget, get it to work for us? And too many times, if we don't execute a strategy properly, we end up feeling like advertising is a necessary evil and even back away from it. But the fact of the matter is, advertising does work. So the idea today, if you're going to walk away with anything, my hope is what you walk away is maybe another way to think about it and develop a strategy. First question that every business has is, how much should I spend on advertising? In a down economy, what's one of the first things that people do? They pull back on their advertising because it seems to be sort of discretionary spending. But if you're going to hear anything from me today, it would be this. In 2012, go into it with a budget, a commitment, a strategy, a plan that you're going to work through and execute. That's how you'll eventually get to where advertising works for yourself. how do you figure out what budget to use? And there's lots of things. I'll use one example. If you're a chiropractor, how often do each of us in here need a chiropractor? Hopefully never, maybe once a year, occasionally. So if I'm talking to a chiropractor about establishing a budget, there's one set of criteria that you would use in figuring that out. If you're a restaurant that's open for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, and all day, every day, people can stop in, see in the morning, see at night, etc. Well, that's a different set of criteria that goes into the budgeting process. So, where's your target market? Are you seasonal? How competitive is your market? There's a lot of factors to think about in establishing and committing to some measure of an advertising budget. Then, once you have a budget, now what's my strategy? How am I going to use it? And there's lots of ways that you can spend in media and advertising. There's clearly lots of outlets. Print, there's social networking, there's TV, there's radio, there's billboards, there's direct mail, telemarketing. There's all sorts of ways to go ahead and try to figure out what should I do. And we're going to go through a step of how you boil this down into a working strategy. Some salespeople tell you, put all your money in this, dominate a market. I think in terms of having web, radio, billboards, a variety of ways, I think we would all suggest that it's multifaceted that gives you your best opportunity. And quite frankly, if you're reading a magazine and you see an ad that you heard on the radio, and then you drive by a billboard and you see that kind of complimentary reminders are very additive into the top of mind awareness if you're in multiple modes of presenting your image and advertising your business. What I find is for those businesses that haven't really figured out the committed budgeting and strategy process and the multi-tiered ways, it can be hard to really feel like you've gotten a good return on what you're doing for advertising. And a lot of people will back off of advertising. And if there's one thing any of us who are in the advertising business here very regularly, it's I'm good with word of mouth. That's what I need. Word of mouth is a very, very good thing. It means that you have happy customers, you're delivering a product or service that people need. It can generate referrals, but it's not about being all you can be. There will be some erosion if you rely on word of mouth as people move away, as your competitors move folks. Word of mouth is critical, but it is very limited in terms of getting you to where if you really want to be all you can be. So, let's get back to how do I make something that work for me where I can afford it and feel like I am getting that good return on investment. And where it starts is planning and planning that strategy with a purpose. How do I want to project my business? Where do I want my message to be projected? Who am I projecting to? And one other thing, not all advertising is the same. There is branding or image advertising. There's call to action advertising. There's networking advertising. There's hyper, where if the military base is a primary target where a lot of your customers are, there's things you can do to really hyper focus in on a military base. So there's different ways to advertise, all under the advertising umbrella, but a call to action is far different than branding or image advertising. And it's the combination of all those things that put you in the best position to be successful. And I'm going to use one of the rules of thumb in the business that, again, whether you're seasonal, what type of business, all kind of things, can throw this out, but we have to start somewhere. I'm going to use 6% of last year's revenues should be committed for next year's advertising budget. So if I did $500,000 in gross sales in my business, and I took 6% of that, that says I'm going to spend $30,000 next year in advertising my budget. So that's what I'm going to commit to and strategize with of how can I make that work. Now I've got all these radio, TV, print, billboard, social networking. I've got all these different criteria. How do I start to boil that down to where it makes sense and allocate an amount for that branding? Allocate some amount for call to action. Allocate some amount for networking. And really develop a comprehensive, intelligent strategy of how to go out this next year and be all you can be from an advertising standpoint. At the end of the day, the most important thing that I'm trying to get across: plan, commit, and execute. And that's not the normal way that small businesses across America do their advertising. But it's definitely the most effective way to do it. Here's how I suggest looking at it: is for a business that's in about that $500,000 range, about 40% of that budget should go towards projecting your image. Remind people who you are, what you do, where you are. Invite people. That projecting that image and brand awareness. It's a foundation. It's a very important part, and it's different than putting a coupon out there. It's different than other types of advertising. But that's one facet that you want to use as a foundation, and that might be, if we're going to spend $1,000 a month on that kind of advertising, the mix I might use is in that examples I put up there, be it social networking, outdoor, radio, print, direct mail. If you can get a lot done for that $1,000 a month budget, you can use 3 different vehicles to blend together and accomplish that goal. And whatever 3 makes sense to each business will be different based upon, again, seasonality, what kind of business, and a variety of other things. The next thing is to make sure that that message is consistent, so you get that additive feature of what's playing on the radio. You also know it's the same message that's going across in print. So you get that connection, which makes it a lot more valuable. And I've talked to a lot of businesses of a lot of sizes, big businesses, who have marketing directors and infrastructure designed for this, where the radio guys don't know where the TV guys are doing, don't know where the print guys are doing, don't know what the web guys are doing. And you're missing tons of connection points if you're not strategizing how they all work together. Now you can take a look at that budget of $30,000 a year, boiled down to monthly, and maybe I'm going to put 30% into what I call that hyper target, which is really that event or that focus on the Air Force Base, or that focus on teachers, or that focus on existing customers. Maybe it's a reward program for existing customers. That's really where your hyper focus goes. And that's not necessarily something you have to do every single month. You might want to do it 4 times a year and accumulate that monthly budget of $750 to where now 4 times a year you've got $3,000 that you're really committed to what I call that hyper-focused promotion for your business. Call to action: sales, holiday-based, coupon-based, different kind of things. Same kind of thing. It doesn't have to be done every month. It might be done every other month, or again, 4 times a year. But a focus on, okay, what am I going to do to create a public call to action and really maybe bring people in for an open house or some kind of an event. And then networking. You know, where are we today in the chamber of that? Well, you know, the chamber is just a wonderful, incredible resource. And there are others out there where a commitment doesn't have to be hugely expensive, but a commitment to networking should be a part of any advertising budget. So when I'm looking at that $30,000 to really help drive my business for the next year, all of these facets need, if they blend together, and you're doing that networking, you're doing that branding, and you're doing the call to action, you're doing the hyper focus, and all with a consistent attention to what you're projecting as your image, who and what you are, what you are expressing yourself as in your product. 30,000, I don't know whether it seems like a lot of money or not a lot of money to a business, but for a $500,000 business at 6%, you can get an awful lot accomplished if you sit down, commit, plan, and execute a strategy. And that's not just all with one venue, not all with just a billboard, not all with just the radio, not all just with TV. But that's a very comprehensive way to project your image out. Now, if you're a $5 million business, how things can start to change is you don't have to necessarily continue to really build that foundation. Once you establish a foundation, now you can start on a larger business putting more of your budget then into call to action advertising and other things. But the foundation comes first, and as the business is bigger on a pro rata scale, that just needs to be maintained. That you've got a solid projection of who you are and what you do, and then more of your budget goes into some of the more aggressive type of call to action and things of that nature.